Hello again, everybody. This is Professor Champy back with another video for you this week. So in this video, I want to talk about one of the most important things that I hope we take away from this class when it comes to the writing of essays, which obviously this being a writing class, we're going to talk a lot about writing essays. And the first idea related to essays that I want to get into is the idea of the writing process. Again, this is going to be one of the most crucial things to take away from this class and to carry with you when you take Writing 101 English Composition, is the idea of the writing process, of thinking about writing as a process. I'm going to break down the different steps that I think are involved in the writing process, and I'll kind of talk a little bit about each one. Each one of these steps is going to get, probably a full deep dive in its own video, or at least most of them will. But let me just say right now, the writing process, okay, here's what the writing process isn't. Do you remember how all throughout your education you had to write these timed essays? Especially for like standardized tests. I remember, they would give you 45 minutes to write an essay about like if your school should make everyone wear school uniforms or something, and now you have 45 minutes to write an essay about that. That just is not how writing works in the real world. And some of the things about this class, like I'm gonna do another video right after this about this this optional diagnostic assignment, and obviously throughout this class we're gonna talk a lot about the exit test that you have to take at the end of the course. So we'll talk a lot about those things. And unfortunately, those things might ask you to do a timed essay, or at least an essay that you only have like a day or two to write or something. But my position, and the position of this class is that writing a timed essay is silly. It's not a serious thing. It's not something that real writers do, Like people who write books or famous novelists, whoever you think is a good writer, they're not sitting there going, oh, I only have 40 minutes to do this. Let me do it as fast as I can. It's just kind of an insane thing that I think was created for testing purposes. I really think that's the only reason anyone ever writes timed essays, is because they were like, oh, well, we have to do these standardized tests. How else could you, see how well students are learning? We have to do that. There's no other way. So we're going to force them to write these timed essays. I think we all hate timed essays, and I think we're right. I think you've been right about this your whole educational career. The teachers were wrong, and you were right about this one. Timed essays make no sense. It's the exact opposite of the writing process. The whole idea of the writing process is that in order to write our most effective or our best essay that's going to get the best grade, that there's basically a series of steps that we have to go through that probably take like a couple of weeks at the very bare minimum. So the other thing that it doesn't work with the writing process is procrastinating until the last minute, which I know is something that students often do, that I did as well when I was a student. But once you get to higher level classes where you have to write like long essays, if you're writing a 10-page essay, which is not something we're going to do in this class, don't worry. But you might have future classes, depending on your major, where they want you to write a 10-page paper. If you try to do that the night before it's due, it's not going to go well. It just isn't. It's not going to be great for you. So what I want to do by explaining this idea of the writing process right now, and then as the semester, as we kind of go through each of these steps ourselves and actually do them, what I'm hoping is that in future classes, when you guys get assigned an essay, that you kind of have a plan for what to do to try to write the best essay you can. So that's not that situation where we get an assignment and we're immediately freaking out because we don't know what to do for an essay, or we're like, okay, whatever, I'll just figure it out later, and then we do it the night before and we just try to bullshit the whole thing in one night. The idea of the writing process is that when you get an essay assignment in a future class where it might seem difficult, maybe it's a long essay, but that you will have a plan and you'll have certain steps that you can go through to try to get the best essay that you can out of it. Now, it's going to be a little bit different for everyone, I'm not going to say that everybody's writing process is exactly the same. I don't think it is. So maybe some of the steps that I'm going to talk about in a second here will be really good and important for you, and maybe some of them, you try them out and you realize that they just are not helpful to you, or you don't think you need to do it, and you can drop those. So, as you progress in your college career, I think we'll all find our own kind of writing process that we have to go through to write our best essays. But I'm gonna, talk a lot about this class, like the one that worked for me, the one that I ended up kind of going with, sort of out of necessity. When I was a freshman or a sophomore, I was also writing most of my papers the night before they were due. I was maybe thinking about them a little bit before that, but not really. But then, yeah, when I got to be like a senior and I had to write a 12-page paper, it was like, well, shit, man, I need to make an outline. I need to kind of write a draft. I need to like get some feedback from my professor. So I have a picture again. I'm going to try to throw a picture into the video. I'm still getting used to my video software here, but hopefully I can throw this picture up now. Okay, so as you can see, we've got our steps that I've kind of put into some bullet points here. So I'm just going to go through them all right now while I have this picture up, and then I'll talk more about each of them individually. So first, we've got brainstorming when we're still trying to think of a topic. After we kind of have an idea of a topic, we want to move to the thesis, coming up with our thesis, doing an outline after that, some bullet points about each paragraph, writing a draft, submitting a draft, and then getting feedback. In this case, from me, you will always get feedback. From other professors, though, you should be able to ask, like, hey, can I send you a draft and let me know what you think? After you get feedback, you would do some revising, some revision, and then lastly, we have proofreading. All right, let me talk more about each one. And like I said, a lot of these, like, thesis, drafting, those ones, they're going to get their own videos later on, so I'm not going to say too much right now. Brainstorming, like I said, this is trying to come up with your topic, right? Trying to get a good sense of what you want to write about. I think the bad way this has been taught in the past, and maybe you guys can sense this already, what kind of a theme with me is going to be thinking that a lot of the ways that we're usually taught how to do the stuff that's related to English, that it's usually pretty bad and not really helpful. But I think if we change our approach a little bit, if we think about it in a slightly different way, I think it can become more helpful. So brainstorm. Something that I don't think is helpful for brainstorming is like those graphic organizers they used to give us, those like worksheets where maybe the one with it had like 4 boxes and they were each supposed to be your paragraphs, or like the graphic organizer I know a lot of students have used where it's like a bunch of like circles in like a web connecting to each other. I think we always hated those. I think we were kind of correctly realized that stuff was busy work and didn't really help. I understand why they had us do it. They want you to try to organize your essay or something. But I don't think those graphic organizers were helpful. What I do think is helpful is having some idea of what you want to talk about before you start writing. So in our class, I might give you just like a little journal assignment that's like a brainstorm where I just ask you, in like a paragraph to just be like, hey, here's what I want to write about. Here are some things that I might say. I think that's a good thing to do before we start writing. The next thing is a thesis. I'm going to do a whole video about thesis next week, but a thesis is your main argument. It doesn't have to be just one sentence. I'm not going to call it a thesis statement. It could be multiple sentences. But a thesis is just your main argument, the thing you're trying to convince the audience of. I think it's a good idea to come up with your thesis, at least like a bullet point of it, at least a rough idea of what your thesis is going to be before you really start writing. Because you need to know what your main argument is. It's hard to start writing the essay if you don't know what the argument you're trying to prove in your essay is. So number 2, I would have to try to come up with a thesis. Number 3 is an outline. Again, it doesn't have to be so formal like you've maybe done in the past. We don't need the Roman numerals here. Just some bullet points of your ideas for each paragraph. If you're making an argument in your essay, maybe like some of the evidence, that you're going to use to back up your argument, like which paragraph is each piece of evidence going to go from. Another good thing with an outline is that you can kind of decide where some quotes are going to go. If you've done some research, maybe you have some quotes that you want to use, you can kind of plan out which paragraph the quotes will go in. So that's outline. Then we're going to write a draft. For me, drafts are not supposed to be perfect. It should be a rough draft, Drafts for my classes don't have to be the full length of what the paper is going to be. So I think a draft is, just kind of getting your ideas on paper, even if it's not, if you're going to change it a lot, even if it's not all the way done, even if you're missing a paragraph or something, you have something you're going to add in later. I think a draft is important just to kind of get your ideas on the page, because then I'm going to look at your drafts and you'll get feedback from me, which was the next step that I had in the writing process, is that when we write an essay in this class, you're going to submit a draft to me, and then you're going to get written comments about it. So I'll let you know if I think you're going in the right direction. I'll let you know if I feel like, maybe you're off topic or you need to change things. I'll give suggestions and all that kind of stuff, just so before you ever hand anything in for like a real grade that's going to affect your overall grade a lot, you'll always have some feedback from me, or I let you know if you're going in the right direction or not. And then after you get feedback, you move on to revision. kind of looking at the big picture stuff, your argument, intro, conclusion, organization, making sure all that stuff is good and that you feel good about how you're doing it. Revision for me is the big picture stuff, and then proofreading, the last step, is kind of just making sure you don't have any typos. We can say it's like checking for grammar stuff, but mostly with proofreading, you just want to make sure that what ended up on the page says what you wanted it to say. Sometimes when we're writing, we can like get too close to the writing, and we miss a word or something like that, but we don't notice, and we think the word's there, but actually it's not. So the idea of proofreading is like, okay, get some distance from the paper, maybe print it out, maybe have someone else read it, and just kind of go through and make sure that you basically didn't make any typos. So yeah, for me, those are the most important steps in the writing process. We're going to go through them all when we write our essays in this class. Don't worry about memorizing any of this stuff. Don't worry if you remember it. I just kind of wanted to give you a heads up of like where we're going to be going, some of the things that we're going to be doing, and also just to hammer home this idea of writing as a process. Writing as something that, it's not just we sit down, blah, 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 okay, it's done. It's this kind of always changing and developing thing. You might write something one day and be like, oh, this is great. This is perfect. I'm right there. But then the next day you'll come back and look at it and you'll be like, oh, what was I thinking? I need to change all of this. So like writing, it's not like a math problem, It's not like 2 + 2 = 4. I'm done. Okay, homework submitted. That's just not how writing an essay is. For better or for worse, there's much more gray area, and it's the kind of thing that we need to give it some time to breathe. So for our class, I'm going to require you to do things like drafts and outlines and stuff. But again, hopefully, I'm hoping that by going through this process, you'll learn what works for you, so that when you get to higher classes where you have to write longer and more difficult essays, you'll have a plan. You'll be like, okay, here's this tough assignment, but look, I can just try to come up with my thesis, and then I can try to make an outline, and I can put my quotes in there, and then, you can be on your way towards writing a successful essay. So yeah, I really just want us to throw out this idea of the timed essay or of procrastinating until the night before. It's not going to be possible for this class. Writing is a process, so we're going to have to treat it that way. And like I said, I really think this will help you for your future classes to have the best approach, All right, so we're going to go through all these steps in the class, and we'll learn more about them and make videos about some of them. But yeah, writing, it's a process that we'll try to go through together. Okay, that's all for now. See you later.